be moderating the data literacy fireside chat with my fellow co-chair and board member to the CompTIA AI Leadership Council, Michaela Kenley. If I got that wrong, please. I'm bad with last names, but she is the CEO of Data Products. And we're going to be chatting about data literacy during this fireside chat. So welcome.
Yes, welcome everyone. Very excited to have you join us here today.
All right, so let's kick this off. So what's data literacy? And I actually looked at your website, and I saw there was a recent survey that there was over 65% of executives worldwide that are not comfortable accessing or using their data. So yeah, if you could do a deep dive in that, that would be awesome.
Oh wow, deep dive. Let's see where I can sort of shed some light. Let's start with the definition, right? So what is data literacy? So when we think of literacy in general, right, you think about the ability for someone to read, to write, and to understand, right, what's the context of what they're talking about is. Likewise, in data literacy, the same notion applies. So think of data literacy as the ability for someone to read, write, and understand data within context. Right? And to your point about data literacy amongst executives, yes, that's an abysmal number, right? We live in a digital world, right? Everything we do and that has a significant impact has a digital footprint, right? And what underpins digital is data. Right? Yet, there is a significant percentage of leaders that truly don't have the skills to sort of work within the data, right? And plenty of you have been in meetings where someone's getting very technical and you just nod along and to get along, and that's okay. The expectation is not that you become a data scientist or become an IT person. That's not your focus, right? As a business leader, your goal is to lead your business or function using the skill sets that you have. But there is a minimum line, given the sort of world that we live. There is a minimum level of understanding that you need to know. You need to be able to harness this power and communicate effectively. Right? A good example I'll give is, imagine trying to find a job in this age and not being able to operate a computer. If you're old enough where there are jobs without the need for computer skills before, that stuns you, right? That's what having that data literacy capability amounts to in this age.
Yeah, and it's becoming more of a challenge these days, right? As firms are consuming so much data and really understanding the type of data they're consuming, how to leverage it. But so I mean, why is it important for firms, and most of all, why is it important to you specifically?
Wow. So there are so it is important. We've all agreed on that. And the way that importance shows up for you as an individual, for your firm, for your community, for your organizations, wherever that organization might be, show up a bit differently. So let's start with the organizational aspect, right? For an organization, every organization nowadays is a digital organization that happens to do such and such. Every organization is technical in some aspect, right? And really, the technical boils down to some digital aspect that collects data, right? If you have to compete effectively, if you want to innovate, if you want to optimize your cost and drive more profit, you want to be able to use all your assets that are available to you to push through, right? Data being that key one. So if you're not leveraging the data, you're missing a key sort of tool in terms of driving your competitiveness, your profit, and your running operations. So you hear the term let's become data driven. That's a big term that's running around. Right? Everyone wants to become data driven. Everyone wants to do digital transformation, right? And yes, it was in the pipeline, but then we had the pandemic, right? And then there was this sort of opportunity for everyone to go digital immediately. And what that meant was there is a felt like we need to get a handle on our data, manage it effectively, leverage it effectively, be more competitive. There's a lot of uncertainty in the economy. How can we use that to find our edge? So there's a flow, there's this significant need that has bubbled up from all those changes happening, right? So as an organization, if you want to drive and leverage data, you need your people to become data literate. So that's important there. What about you as an individual? Let's use the same example about the computer, right? Imagine going to look for a job or work for a company and you don't know how to run a computer. You even think about that. That's not something that you can imagine, right? And yet you look for a job without being able to understand data. Again, I keep saying this, but there's no expectation of everyone becoming a data scientist, right? You're good at your skill, and that's great. But if you would imagine for a minute here, as someone, say you're in supply chain or you're a healthcare worker, and you understand you are data literate, or you're marketing, you're data literate. Do you think that sets you up with an edge over your colleagues in terms of being able to do your job much more effectively? Absolutely. You can see things better, you can ask the right questions, which means that you can drive better decisions in your role. So it sets you up individually to become more capable and to do better in the sort of work that you do.
So, Meishi, I just noticed that I didn't do like a proper introduction. So, do you want to tell everyone what you do specifically from your day-to-day job? And then I could go next.
Sure, absolutely. So yes, let's do a proper introductions of ourselves, right? So I am Dr. Mechi Kinla, and I run data products. Jason and I know each other from lots of different things, including our efforts in co-sharing communities for AI. What I do, so what we focus on, right, around data strategy. We're a data firm. We lead, read, and work within data. We could do other things, but that's what we choose to focus on because we understand the importance of it, and that's really what gets our mojo going. So we do a bunch of data strategy, right, that range from monetization to digital transformation, master data management, governance, and a host of other things. Beyond the strategy aspect, we work a lot on some data science projects, including AI and machine learning, and build our strategy for those effectively to ensure that the ROI goes up. And of course, right, we have our data literacy practice, which is the newest practice that we have, but we're getting a lot of excitement around it. For good reason, it is critical to every digital initiative, and yet there's not a lot of investment that has been done amongst organizations for it. Jason, what about you? Why don't you introduce yourself a bit?
Yeah. So I'm Jason Juliano. I lead digital transformation for Eisner Digital. So my team works on emerging technologies for our clients. So integrating AI solutions, data analytics and business intelligence, intelligent automation too with bots. And then in the future, we're going to start advising and even building some AI-enabled blockchain networks. But just circling back of what you mentioned before, when we do client engagements, I see this time over time is that they don't know where to start, and I tell them to start from the fundamentals, right? So understanding the data that they're collecting, and as the saying notes that bad data in is bad data going out, right? So garbage in, garbage out. So I think, it's important for, the users, right? And it doesn't matter what organization you're in or if you're in a university, really take time to understand the data you're collecting and making sure that you clean up that data, right? And then, look at it from, organizational perspective, put these different data silos and chunks so you can manage them more effectively. But do you want to add anything to that before I go into the next question?
No, you said it well. We could go into it, but I fear that that's going to derail us. That's a whole other conversation around the data management, the quality, the governance around that. So let's try to, we'll get back to it. It's a very interesting topic, and it's not a simple one at that.
Okay, so that being said, so how's it different, data literacy from being more, analytical? And does a person need to understand analytics to become data literate?
Good questions. Right, I kept saying that. I think you've heard me say this a couple of times already. You don't need to be analytics, right? Data literacy definitely does not equate to being more data analytical. They're different things, right? You can be data literate, understand what they're talking about, be able to write about it, and ask questions about it. That's data literate. An analytics person is someone that needs to then go and pull data, do analysis, do visualizations, and give the reporting. Not the same sort of skill set, right? As a matter of fact, I will go so far as saying there is data literacy that's required for people that are analytical. That sort of literacy is referred to oftentimes as business literacy, right? How many times have we been in meetings where you have this super smart technical person come in, give a presentation about a model that they have done, talk about area under the curve, right? R mean squared, to executives that have no experience with building models, right? There's a lack of communication, which boils us down to one of the key reasons for data literacy. Yes, I talk about the becoming more driving decisions with data and become more innovative and driving profits and all of that. But underneath all of that, the key pillar is communications, right? By nature of the work that we do, we're siloed. Not necessarily a bad thing. We're siloed because we're specialized, right? I have special skills, different people have special skills. So when we think of an organizational structure in general, we're talking about people, processes, and technologies, right? You have those that are focused more on the process side, those that are focused more on the people side, those that are focused more on the technology side. But connecting all of those three things together is the data. So data literacy can also be thought of as that communication model, right? That allows the CEO to communicate effectively with the VP of IT, to communicate effectively with the health clinical director. That helps that person to communicate effectively with the marketing person. That helps the marketing person to communicate effectively with the salesperson. That helps the salesperson to communicate effectively with the mail clerk, and so on and so forth. So it's that sort of underlying common language that allows us to express ourselves, communicate better, drive decisions better.
Yeah, so from a executive perspective, do you think organizational executives need to be data literate?
Oh, absolutely critical, yes. It starts from the top and flows downwards, right? And unfortunately, right, you saw that number, not a good number, right? It's like, do what I say and don't do what I do. You as an executive expect your team to be data literate. You need to lead by example. They need to be able to communicate with you in that common language.
Any examples or tips for the audience?
I'll give it a story, right? Not a very flattering one.
I love stories.
I'm trying to keep it short. So we had an engagement a couple of years back, and we're working with a client, and we're in a meeting, and we have this fantastic model. We're building an AI model. and we come in and we do the presentation, we go about the cons and the pros and the cons and outlines and scenario setting, and we're done. And it was a fantastic model. I was very excited by it. And an executive goes, "So where is the AI?" Right? And that question made me shrink. I'm like, oh my goodness, no, he did not. Right? The idea of AI is still seen as something that's futuristic or robotic or something that wows you, right? As opposed to a baked in line sort of heuristic algorithm that follows certain rules that have been designed by whoever created the algorithm. Right? And that shows a disconnect between what actual AI is. And I know just you and I can probably go into deep stories about what people expect AI to be and what it actually is, what it people think it can do and what it can actually do.
We were talking about this in Chicago, remember?
Yeah. Right. So there's a huge disparity, right? Now, as an executive, you should understand high level, right? What the difference are. Right? And as a technical person, I will reiterate, you need to understand business context. It is important to be able to communicate your findings in a language, in a business language, that whoever is going to be the end user can understand.
Yeah, I mean, so, we're doing this to, celebrate also, World Literacy Day. But we're preparing a cybersecurity executive summit in October for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. But that got me thinking that there should be like a data literacy awareness month, right? Because it takes that much investment to really change the culture and make everyone understand the data they're ingesting, how to leverage it from their partners. But again, just to make them more data literate, right?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
And so we're working through this. We've been having lots of conversations with lots of people in the field, and over 50% of them have never heard the word data literacy. Right? It's granted it's sort of a newish term as relates, but still the concept should be something. The concept should be something that is very familiar, right? And the good thing about the conversations is they usually end in a no-brainer. Sure, I would like to learn more. Sure, I want to understand better about how to communicate with data. I want to be able to influence and drive decisions with data. Everyone wants to do that.
So, and we had this conversation a couple of days ago, but from your perspective, do you think data literacy should be a HR or IT function, and should that specific department take responsibility and accountability for that, or what that approach should be for the organization?
That's a very interesting question. And let me try to answer this in a bit more comprehensive manner, so bear with me for a little bit. Right. So data, in terms of the functions, the processes, and the technology, sits under the CIO or the CDO sort of umbrella that flows downwards, right? And as an overarching sort of roadmap in terms of initiatives is a data strategy. And the data strategy should include a data literacy as part of this mandate, right? So in that sense, it falls squarely underneath the IT sort of side of the house. However, there is no training that occurs, none that is successful in terms of people growth and training and upskilling without the CHRO office, right? That means the people side, the HR side, needs to be involved. So to answer your question, it needs to be a marriage, right? So how do we build out data literacy programs? So one of the things that we do in our practice, we build customized data literacy programs for organizations. We recognize that data literacy is not a one-size-fits-all, right? My data literacy journey is very different from your data literacy journey, right? It's going to depend on what my skill sets are right now, what role I play right now, what my target is in terms of what the sort of jobs I want to do in the future, and map out the expectations of what I need to know. Likewise for you. And that journey is usually not the same thing. So when we're building out data literacy programs for organizations, that's one of the things that we do, right? We focus on what are the roles? Can we build archetypes or personas? What is the expectation for this persona archetype in terms of skill sets around data and understanding? And then build a program for them to sort of assess themselves and test and take and train. That cannot be done without HR. So it needs to be a marriage between the IT side as well as the HR side in building out that data literacy program. So I would add before I digress. I would add before I digress, data literacy is not a once and done. It's not something that you do once or a workshop that you go take and like all of a sudden you're data literate. No, it's a continuous growth thing. It's a personal growth thing that you're always going to keep doing, right? So it's where am I right now? I've taken this class. Where am I now compared to where I was before? So long as there's an upward mobility, that is progress. We're on the right track.
So let's dig deeper with that, right? So as the saying goes, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right?
Yes.
So whether you have a digital strategy or data strategy, it really, you have to make a huge investment in changing your organization's culture. And it's both a top-down and bottom-up approach.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about culture. Like, what's your insights on how to create a much more innovative and data-driven culture within an organization?
So I took a deep breath because this is a problem we come across time and time and time again, right? And I have thoughts and I have suggestions and advisory that I give my clients and ways to do it. And there are other ways to do it, right? And not every way is the best solution for every person. Culture is finicky, right? In the past, we all have the 6 Sigma sort of processes and belts that people go in and dive into, and like, this is it, it's boxed in, there is no flexibility, and so you follow step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and that's it. That's the way you do it. Otherwise, you're not doing the correct job. But there's a lot of nuance and complexity in terms of culture, right? So we have organizations that have been around for 100 years. There's a culture of this is the way things are done. And it's not something that is tangible, but certainly there is a heart of the organization. If you say, oh, I need some data, right? And you're asking the analyst to go pull your data, say out of JD Edwards or some Oracle, some other data store. And they go, okay, it's going to take me a week to pull it out, right? And say your goal is to implement governance. And your governance is not everyone can go to the source to pull out that data, right? People need to go to some more central location for one source of truth in terms of your data management to pull out the data. However, your process to get that data would take you a week, right? And I'm like, I need to do some results right now to make decisions tomorrow. There's no way I can wait for a week for this analyst to go pull out the data. And this is something new that we're implementing because we realized that this is the right way to do it. But in the past, I just used to go directly to JD Edwards and pull that data. What do you do in that circumstance? Do you wait for the week or do you go directly to JD Edwards? Your job is not based on following governance. Your job is based on making that decision using the right tools, right? So there's a conundrum there. And so culture, if you have a culture of doing that, to change that culture to the better way, which is enacting the governance, there needs to be facilitation. You need to make it easy for me to change. There needs to be incentive for me to stop that old behavior and start the new one. And that change management we find. I haven't seen a data strategy that change management is a part of. That's a miss.
Yeah, and be comfortable with asking questions, right? Everyone in an organization should, I get involved in client engagements where, some of my clients will have like fully mature data analytics and BI teams. But, their constant complaint is, we're not getting the right dashboards or reports from our team. So like we'll go in and keep on asking, well, why this, why that? And it takes me like 8 to 10 whys before I get to the heart of what the problem is. So, what I tell my team is that, the whole data analytics, data science side is more of an art form than anything else. We really have to understand, the data we're consuming, but what's the intent, right? Because you could slice it in 10 different ways and come up with different conclusions, but you're still looking at the same data, right?
Absolutely. You've just triggered my memory into a couple of things, right? So again, you can think of data literacy as this understanding of data that will help you ask the right questions, not just asking questions, asking the right questions.
Yep.
Now, I'll tell you a scenario. This is what we do when we engage with clients. Usually people come in with preconceived notions about what they want. And what they want rarely aligns with what they need, what they're actually looking for, right? Because they're trying to communicate in a manner using words and terminology that they think are the right ones, right? Whereas their focus is more on the line of business. So this question is why, or what will you do with this when I give it to you? And the good example I have here is this guy walks into a vacuum sales shop and goes, I need a new vacuum.
Right? It sounds like a joke.
And the salesperson goes, oh, fantastic. What happened to the old vacuum? Right? And he goes, well, it's working, but I still keep getting dust all the time in the house. I'm like, so there's not a problem with it? I'm like, I don't know, man. It's just, I keep vacuuming every day and there's just dust around. And then the salesperson goes, but what's causing the dust to come in, right? Where is the dust coming from? And goes, oh, there's this window that's open, that's not really closing well, and so dust comes in all the time. Really, the salesperson should not be selling a new vacuum, right? This user needs a new window, not a new vacuum. So in that same sort of analogy, right, we as technical people, we should stop giving new vacuums and new technologies to solve problems that a new window will basically resolve.
That is so true. And unfortunately, I see it time and time again, more frequent than anything else. Mm-hmm. All right. Oh, by the way, for the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to push it in the chat, and then someone will send the questions over to us. So what are some tips that myself or any of our audience members could use to become more data literate and even share with their team members?
Right. So I would start by saying this, right? Know where you stand. And this is something I should have shared in the beginning, but I forgot. There is a link. Natalia, please put that in the chat for data literacy assessment. It's a very simple 5-minute set of questions. Go ahead, take it at your pace. Should be really fast, less than 5 minutes. And it's going to give you a standing of where you or your organization stands in terms of the data literacy capabilities, right? So know where you are, always assess. This is where you are in terms of your maturity curve. The next is, where do you want to be? What are your career goals? Where do you think you're going to need data skills in that, right? Are you going to be a leader, manager, executive? How can you communicate to influence with data? If you're going to be a leader, what sort of skills do you need as data? You need to be able to communicate with data, right? You want to influence people with data. You want to be able to tell stories with data so that it has an impact. You want to be able to understand the fiduciary duties around data, which boils down to privacy concerns, compliance, security, and a host of other things. You want to be able to understand how it ties to the underlying business strategy and profit, right? Another key thing. So given that, if you have that mapping of this is where you are right now, within your personal growth or your organization or teams, and this is where you want to be, and you outline where is that gap, it gives you a sort of a starting place to work towards. Right? Always start with where you are. Know what you don't know. That's the most difficult questions, right? We tend to know what we know, right? And we know what we don't know. The hard part is not knowing what we don't know.
Is there any other resources you would like to share?
There are a few, right? So let's start with that. If you go to we have a website with a list of resources. I can't remember the URL of the website right now, but feel free to ping me on LinkedIn, and I will share that link with you. It has a list of resources around data literacy you can explore from different organizations. That's critical.
So I'm personally like all about driving immediate results, right? So if I wanted to like embark and create like a fast start data literacy awareness program, like what can I do within the next 1 or 2 weeks to help me jumpstart that?
Great question. You need to build out your narrative. By that, I mean your why. Why data literacy and why now? That's basically your communication protocol to build out that buy-in and sponsorship, but also to get the excitement within your team and your organization about going on this journey with you. Without that underlying story, that vision, right, you're either not going to get the sort of sponsorship that you need, or you're not going to get the excitement from your team that you need in order to accomplish this. The very first step would to build up that why. Building it in a way that it matters, right? It matters to the organization and, of course, to every employee, right? Once you have that solidly built, you can start with a simple assessment, right? Again, it's work with HRs to say, where are we, right? Are we providing the sort of skills and resources that are needed for people to advance the way they want to? And what's a good starting thing that we can do? Is it a course that we want to provide to them, a workshop that we want to provide to them? Is it some body program where we're tagging people that are highly technical with those that are not for an hour or so a day, or having them big brother, big sister mentor around data? Is it a cross-functional thing where we're pulling people from different teams to work on projects together so that knowledge is shared through osmosis? Is it where we're bringing someone from outside to do a ride along around certain things? Is it a workshop that we're creating? Is it a course that we're building, right? Or we're making available to our employees? You start with something, one thing, two things. You execute on it. Do another level setting assessment. Was there improvement? Great. If there's not, then where did you mess up so that you plug that hole so that you don't do that again?
Yeah, I want to add an additional resource that you and I are working on. So CompTIA.org, they will be pushing out a new certification around data analytics and business analytics. So that will be more catered to junior staff people or even students in universities today. But that being said, are there any other resources specific to students that you recommend?
Not that with students in particular. I would say this though, we are working on courses that we're developing, right? One of the first rollout, I'm very excited by it, is a course called Data Literacy Fundamentals, right? Like the name suggests, right? It's something that is fit for everyone from the mailroom to the boardroom, right? So there's no expectations of how technical you need to be to understand it. So it's quite comprehensive. It's a 360 view of what data and analytics and how it impacts organizations, you, and how to navigate some basic understanding. So it's not very deep, but it's very broad. We're going to launch in the next couple of weeks. If you are interested, please use that link. Natalia is going to drop a link onto the chat to sign up to get notified when we actually launch. And the expectation of launch is in the next month. So I'm very excited by it. It's a very broad course, very basic, easy baby steps.
I gave you a little virtual clap there.
Thank you, thank you. So yes, non-technical course more around understanding why data analytics understand is important, and so you can understand the lay of the land, so to speak.
So, any other final thoughts you want to share before we take questions from the audience?
One final thought I would say is I'm really passionate about data literacy, right? And I can get really emotional about it. But let me give you one of my key reasons. We live in a digital world, right? There's a push for everyone to have access to computer or internet as a fundamental right. But having access to the digital devices and content without understanding, right, the underlying risk and rewards from a data perspective, I think is very lopsided. So I would think data literacy is actually a fundamental human right as well, along with access to internet, along with access to devices. There's a key need to understand what you're giving away. Imagine the 10-year-old playing the computer and she doesn't understand what data she's leaving trails on, what cookies, right? How that might affect her, whether it's currently or in the future. We need to understand that.
Yeah, I like that. Fundamental right for every world citizen.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. A question did come in that this is an interesting one. So how long does it take for someone to become data literate? And I'll let you answer that, and I'll probably add some to that too.
Please do, because I don't think my answer is going to be sufficient. All right, like all good answers, is going to be, it depends, right? So it's going to depend on who that individual is, what they're trying, what their path is. Again, each journey is very unique, right? What are you trying to accomplish? Where are you starting from? And what resources you have to support you.
Yeah, so it's great that you talk about resources. So data resources are surrounding us day to day. And I would say even like if you have an Apple Watch, for instance, there's data going in and out of there. You could pull that data and, really do a deeper dive into, your overall, lifestyle, not just from, day to day where you're going, but your health also, right? So you can monitor, if you've gone hiking on a Sunday, look at, vitals to really, do a deeper understanding of how you felt that day. And, just circling back to, the data that's getting ingested through that Apple Watch. But, that's just one of the examples of how data is surrounding us, not just in our professional lives, but in our personal lives too. We have another question. What tools?
Jason, before you move on to that, I want to add on that. I'm sorry, because you piqued my mind, right? This is another critical problem. When people hear about data, there's this emotional tie to it that makes them shrink. It's like walking to a room and telling people you're a mathematician, and everyone gives you the funny eye, right? There is this sort of emotional, like, oh, he must be crazy to be doing stuff with that. However, data in particular is quite interesting because we live in a digital world and we're surrounded by all these devices and applications. We are already digital. It's just hidden by pretty UI and UX application on top of it, right? How many people we use some application to find out where the fast or the best traffic to where to go where they're going? There's Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever. We all do it, right? We don't think that that's all data underneath it, right? You're looking for a mortgage. You're shopping within lenders and looking at numbers to make the best decision based on what. But again, your mind doesn't connect that you're really using this data. You have a kid going to college, and you do the analysis about shortest distance from home, any scholarship, and what's going to cost you overall, and how the standing, the program that your kid is going to study in. That's all data-driven decisions. You're using data to make those. Fantasy football, oh my goodness. How many people have fantasy football leagues? Yes, and you're calculating statistics and all of that. They get so excited, and yet you say, are you data-driven, or do you understand anything about data? And everyone goes, nope, not my thing. Right? So there's this huge disconnect between the idea of what data is, right, and what it means to be data literate and what people are actually doing already. It's already very ubiquitous in the way we use it in our lives.
You can only imagine the prep work I did for my fantasy football team right before the draft happened.
Right.
And stats all over the place. Yeah, it was crazy. Definitely invested too much time in that. All right. So here's another question. What main tools do you need to become data literate?
So no tools, right? So it's about understanding, finding a program that works for you in terms of the skills that you need to get to where you want to go. Right? If it's around communications, if you want to focus around being able to communicate with data, that means quantitative reasoning, right? Being able to look at something, a graph. You don't need to know how it's created, but you need to be able to understand what it's saying and ask the right questions. We're going back in circle, right? Asking the correct, not just asking questions, but asking the right questions is critical. I'll give you an example of a marketer, right? You're a marketing person, you're running a campaign, and you're like, oh, we had 100% up, like 100% more people click on this link, right? Whatever that might be, right? And you're running a campaign for sales for some e-retailer, for example. So is your metric of success the number of people that click on your link or the actual number of sales that resulted from that campaign? Two distinct things, right? And you need to be focused on asking that right questions to help you create the right metrics so that your campaign really captures which one. So if it's your campaign is not working, switch focus, find a different campaign that targets that the right goal.
Yeah, here's another question. So how can data literacy help companies succeed? Can you answer this in two ways? So one, on the overall operations of the business, and then two, like competitive advantage within their own industries.
Oh yes. So let's start with operations, right? The reason why everyone wants to become what everyone's trying to do digital transformation is because there's an understanding that you want to see what you're doing. What was that said? Donald Rumsfeld? What gets measured gets managed, right? There is a sort of link in terms of seeing what you're doing and the result of that, and understanding whether you want to keep doing it or not. Right? You want to understand, if I ask you what your budget is being spent on, you would like to, as a manager, leader, executive, you want to know how much of your budget is being spent for people resources on customer service. How effective is that customer service, right? Would it be much better for your organization if we were to automate that, right? That means better service to the clients because you're preemptively thinking about the questions that they want and providing solutions for them and directing that budget to other things. So for when questions are not answered, you have one-on-one help, right? Without long waiting lines to drive at it. What about supply chains? We all hear about supply chain being the news lately, right? It's a big problem, especially in the uncertain economy, right? Whether it's by wars or other political factors or pandemic health factors that are affecting it. It's an influx. Things are not the way they used to be. So there's a lot of movements and chaos in it. How do you streamline it the best way you can, right? So that you maintain stability. You need data to be able to predict things. You need data to see how things have been done and what you can sort of massage to push it forward. So one of the key things I say about data or data transformation, when creating a digital strategy, a key aspect of that has to be about operations optimization. How can you optimize your operations effectively? So that's the one. The second is around innovation or driving competitive advantage. You want to find new ways of making money. So let's take a step back. As a business, whatever business you are, right? The key thing that drives your revenue is your client. To drive more revenue and be more effective, you want to ensure that your clients are served better, right? The customer experience is key. You want to ensure that you're providing them other solutions to other needs that they may have, they may know they have, or they may not realize that they have. But in essence, you want to make their life better. That's the bottom line. To make a client's life better, you want their experience dealing with you to be better. You want your solutions that you provide to them to be better. You want to solve problems before they become problems, right? That's really all it is about business, regardless of what sort of business you are. That's your focus. And data is a key part of that, right? So let's talk about customer experience. I sort of drove into it and connected it from the operational side. When a customer comes to you for help, first of all, you want to reduce the amount of time that a customer is coming to you for help, because if the customer is coming to you for help, that means you're not preemptively engaging in addressing issues that you may have. But you want to make that process as seamless as possible, whether it's through your ServiceNow tickets, right? You want to create pipelines that say, this is a problem that we have, this is how you solve it. It's also going to, bottom line, is going to add to your budget in terms of your revenue, because you're not spending a lot of time answering questions that you can preemptively answer. But secondly, you're also giving the consumer, the customer, the client, a seamless experience that makes it enjoyable for them to deal with you, as opposed to, say, to a competitor. It's also driving innovation. You can use the data to come up with new machine learning things, new features that you can either monetize or just use to optimize your operations, right? Making you stand out. It can build IP, I'm talking about intellectual property, right? That creates value for your organization. So sometimes if you want to sell or protect yourself, you have that as well. It can drive innovation. It can create excitement for those working for you. Who doesn't want to work for an innovative company, right? Everyone does, right? That's why you see the biggest, I'll make this comment. So the biggest in terms of value and excitement organizations in the world are those that harness data terrifyingly well. I don't need to name who they are. We all know who they are. The biggest, most valuable organizations in the world are those that make use of their data incredibly well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just actually mentioned this to a colleague of mine today, but you can't manage what you can't measure, right?
Right.
So that's a good point you made. And I would just go back with culture, right? You have to build a, digital transformation culture and enable everyone to think outside the box, to be more innovative. And then lastly, leverage, your data to help pivot your business to new business models. That's how you become, have that stronger competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
All right, we got another question. So should all my employees be data literate, or is it enough for a manager in each department to be responsible for that?
Oh, no, you want all your employees to be data literate. I'll throw the question back. Is it okay if only your managers know how to make decisions? No, right?
Most of the time is the people that are in the assembly line, right? Just cranking
Absolutely.
out the work.
Absolutely. So you want everyone within your organization to have that power within them to make the decisions that's backed by the information that's coming through.
And that's how you become more innovative, right? So, constantly, allowing and enabling your employees to, think outside of the box and leverage data to perform their businesses better.
Yes, and give room for them to experiment, right? There are times a lot of times they're going to try to innovate and fail, and that's okay. So long as you're allowing room, you're creating the space, with guardrails, of course, for them to go in and try out things. That's where it's at. You need to allow that room for people to try and experiment. It's okay to experiment and fail. Failure in that sense is not true failure, right? Yeah, you think about it. So long as you have a lessons learned, it's not a failure. It is a success.
Right, absolutely. Another question: do you think data literacy will be a skill required by employees when hiring in the near future?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
had this number, I forgot. I think was it Gartner that did a survey? I can't remember. But I think it said something around 90% of organizations are going to make it a key factor in terms of their hiring practices in the next couple of years. I'm not talking 3 years out, I'm talking 1, 2 years. It's going to be a key requirement.
Okay. I don't think we have any more questions. Yeah, we'll save 9 minutes of everyone's life. But thank you for the audience for joining us. And I would say, definitely. Hold on, there's another question. Okay, here we go. Should data literacy be taught in schools? If so, what's the age do you think is best for kids to learn and understand concepts? I would say kindergarten.
So would I. Absolutely, so would I. I was going to say, you know how a 1-year-old can manipulate a tablet, a cell phone? Can, oh my, it's incredible. It's incredible. And if you can teach them to understand logic, it doesn't have to be high level, but understand that there's some underlying stuff that's happening here, information. They're smart humans. They will be able to start learning and asking the right questions. I have this story about a colleague of mine. And when she was in school, she was in high school, and her computer teacher took away their mouses, took away all they had to work with was a keyboard. This is pre-laptop, like big box computers. And this was like DOS and Linux DOS commands, right? So their teacher made them do everything that they needed to do on the keyboard. So they know all the commands, and it's become second nature to her now, right? As well as if you're working with engineering and programmers, they tend to use a keyboard more. It's easier to sort of type out the command really fast as opposed to drag. It becomes second nature, something that's bred in you. Ideally, that's what we want people to think. Like everything you do in terms of the digital age, you want to think about what's data, what data decisions am I making, what's being collected from me, how am I using any other information to sort of make an informed decision. We want it to become second nature. So train as early as possible. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been putting my daughter into STEM camp since she was in elementary school. So
there you go.
Yeah, I think you have to start when they're and if you don't start, quite frankly, I think they're going to do it on their own. So the question is, are you going to show them the right way, or are they going to learn bad habits?
Let me give you another funny example. I have a story, right, about people using data. So how many times have we seen the ad on TV, right, that goes, 90% of dentists approve this message, right? We've all seen that. And then you take it at face value. Oh my goodness, so many dentists must really like this. That means, or dermatologists or whatever must like this. Therefore, it's a great product. I should start using this instead of the one I'm using, right? So data literacy is about understanding certain things, right? So when you say 90%, want to ask the right questions. 90% of how many? What's that sample size, right? Was it 10 people? Was it 10 dentists that were taken, right, out of whole United States? And then they say 99 of them said yes, and so it's 90%. Is that true, right? And also, where were these dentists taken from? Was it from a farm in Utah?
Could be
was it all in Chicago? Was it in the suburbs, right? Does that apply to me, right? They have a different environment. You want to, and I'm not saying disagree, but what I'm saying is be knowledgeable about context in terms of way data is being used to ask these questions. And then you make your own decisions from that. But we don't even think about challenging and asking these questions. We just accept it as fact that 90% of dentists or dermatologists or whatever agree, right? There's a big difference between 9 out of 10 people saying yes to something than 9 million out of 10 million saying yes to something. They're all 90%.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point with the population and where the population is coming from.
Yes.
I love the questions. They keep on coming. I guess we could have done this for 2 hours. But here's another question. In a general note, in your opinion, how can a better understanding of data literacy be better implemented, applied in one's day-to-day life?
Could you repeat that again?
All right, I'm gonna. How can we understand data literacy to be better? Oh, okay. How can we leverage data literacy to be better implemented and applied in one's day-to-day life?
All right. So we're talking outside of the.
Yeah, but.
So we're talking outside of the workplace, right?
Yeah.
So the first is quantitative reasoning, right? I think my belief is everyone should have quantitative reasoning. It does not mean the same thing as math. It just means being able to understand and reason quantitatively effectively. And there are lots of games that you can start with from kind of age that gets you to do that, right? Games will get you to be quantitative in the way you think. Once you become that way, right, then you start to apply it to every day. So you use your fantasy football, right? You're crafting your team, you're looking at statistics, and yet you swear that you have no training in math, that you hate math with all your being, and yet you use it very effectively when you want to. The key is to learn in a context with subjects and topics that matter to you, that interest you. Right? So if you learn about sample sizing, right? How can you leverage that and apply it to something that matters to you? Whether it's sports, whether it's art, and yes, there is math in art. Yes, there is. We can go to a whole different topic, rabbit hole, but let's not. Whether it's in food preparation, there is math everywhere, right? And I use math, I should say quantitative reasoning. Think of it as this universal language that ties everything that we see and feel in this physical world that we are in, that communicates how you used to describe things in a way that everyone can understand it without being subjective.
Yeah, that's great. Appreciate it. Yeah, just wherever you're passionate and just bring that into, really understanding, data, and bringing it into your own lives. But, like we mentioned before, data is surrounding us. So the question is, how can you leverage it to your best ability? And it's wherever you're passionate and right.
And like we said, we use it already in so many other ways. We just need to learn to use it in all the ways. And you do so by asking questions. And you ask questions like, truly, what's this? And then it has you thinking, and then you figure out the solution.
And you may have to ask many questions until you get to the right question and the right response to that question.
Right.
All right. I think that was the last question, which leaves us to like 90 seconds to the end of the hour. But thank you so much. If you want more information, go to dataproducts.io. She actually has her whole data literacy awareness program in there, and you could, reach out to her and her team.
Thank you, Jason. This has been a pleasure speaking with you as always. This is a great conversation. We might come back again for a part two. I love the questions coming out from the audience, by the way. Those are fantastic questions. I enjoy talking about data, and I can keep going. So this has been a pleasure. Yes, there's a link if you want to sign up to be notified when we have the course, or you just want to ping me, please feel free to do so. And we can talk more about data literacy and all things data in general.
All right, everyone. Thank you for attending. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.